Hello, everyone, and welcome to Kevin's Corner. First, I want to say thank you to everyone who joined me last week while I was working remotely. We got a lot of good feedback about that Kevin's Corner, so I appreciate you all for watching. Today, I kind of want to do part two just because we, as a group, have had to learn a lot in the last week about how we're going to deal with the pandemic in all of society, but also, of course, professionally. And it's raised a couple of issues that I want to talk about how important estate planning is in this pandemic, for really two reasons. And one, the first one is I know it's probably very low on everyone's to-do list, but I realized a couple of things that I wanted to share. First, if you haven't done an estate plan, it's not necessarily that this will be your final chance, but it will be very, very important to do it, especially if you already have an illness, a sickness, etc. And the reason why is not necessarily about the danger of the coronavirus. It's not that it is going to be fatal to so many people or anything like that. It is that we get a lot of people who call in and say, I've had this bad illness, I've had this bad condition, and now I am going to be in the hospital. Basically, you need to sign something now because we might not have much chance. And that happens to us all the time, which is good because usually we can go and to get it taken care of. The problem we have now in the coronavirus is that even if the disease is not that bad, the healthcare system is overtaxed. And so what that's meant, obviously this is something of a hospital by hospital or maybe even place by place type of an issue, that a lot of them are restricting visitors. And they are severely restricting visitors because they don't have the protective equipment. And they can't risk someone coming in who could make another vulnerable patient sick as a carrier of the coronavirus. So what that really means is, whereas in the past somebody would call and say, hey, I got this bad diagnosis, or usually it's family who calls and says, can you come to the hospital to do the sign? And the answer may be, no, we might not be able to come in. We might not be able to go and have a meet with that person. We might not be able to get it taken care of. Now, there might be alternatives to that, of course. There might be some way of doing a holographic will, a totally handwritten will, or some workaround, or maybe the person will recover and can come out of the hospital or whatever. But the real key is for people who have waited too long, there's usually been that last gasp, that last effort, sometimes in the final, not minutes, but final days, where they can still do an estate plan. That may be totally forestalled. So if you already have a bad health condition, especially one that you know is coming, it may not seem like the kind of thing you want to come in for, but it is probably now the time to do it, because if you wait any later, you're going to have less time. To the second point of why you still can do something like estate planning now, and this is something that we've had to work out as an office for the last week, but so far I've been able to fairly successfully implement, is all of our internal precautions about how we're going to deal with the coronavirus. So let's say this, for example, a new client calls us at this point. We typically have preferred to do in-person consultations, not always, but that's certainly the preference. In certain cases, it's almost essential. But now we are doing a lot of phone consultations. We are doing video consultations. You already know we can use video. You're watching me on Facebook. But we've been doing Zoom conferences and things like that. So there are other ways without a person coming in and not having to leave the self-quarantine or worry about coming into our office, and still be able to have that consultation. For existing clients, still do emails, phones, etc. Nothing has changed there. But it gives the opportunity to keep moving forward with the estate plan so that they can be accomplished, especially now where it may be very important for the reasons I've already said. By that same token, even where we have estate planning that needs to be signed, depending on what you're signing, like a will needs 2 witnesses, for example, ideally that gets done in the office, because then we know how it's done. We can oversee the execution. We can make sure we have 2 witnesses from our office, for example, 2 independent witnesses clearly, and that takes care of all of it. We can go through and just make sure it's all good. Now what we're doing with clients, because we recognize it's not always a good idea, especially for elder clients to come into our office because they are that vulnerable population, what we're able to do, and what we've been actually about to start doing, is we are either going to do a review in advance via Zoom or a phone call, or however you're going to handle that by the client, and then be able to have a mobile notary go out and make arrangements to have the document signed where the person is. Now, obviously, someone has to be there, but it's still a much, much better way and a less complicated. It's a better distancing option than now everyone coming into the office and having a room of 5 or 6 people. So in that sense, we can keep moving forward, make sure these things get taken care of, even while we have this pandemic. And then even beyond that, there are people who still want to come in. For the most part, we're trying to work remote, honoring the way most workplaces are, doing this from a distance. But what we're doing is, I'm in the office today because we had to have an in-person meeting, But for the most part, we're going to work remote, which will hopefully keep down all the incidences or any kind of exposure we could have in our office. For people who still want to come, that's perfectly fine. We can still handle all of that. What we are, however, doing is making sure to wipe down virtually everything, both before and after people come. We're spraying an unbelievable amount of disinfectant and Lysol wipe, or Lysol spray, just to make sure that there are not going to be any kind of issues like that. And then taking our own precautions, like I had said last week, where I self-quarantined because I was getting over a cold. So those are just a couple of thoughts. Of one, it may not seem like it's high on the priority list. It's not necessarily the coronavirus is going to be dangerous to you. It's that for people who wait too long, the healthcare system may not let us complete an estate plan. We may not be able to go to you, or anybody will be able to get to you. So doing it earlier is a better plan. And even if it's just kind of business as usual for you, that can still be accomplished in a way that's keeping contagion in mind as we go through and figure out how we're going to handle this in the next few weeks as a society. So hopefully those are a couple of good ideas and reasons to keep moving forward with your estate plan now more than ever. The one other thing I do want to say is a lot of people are probably going to have a lot of downtime, or at least time that they're remote. We're getting all of our news about this from social media anyway, right? You can see on our Facebook page here or on our website, galliganmanning.com, we have posted many, many, many blog entries over the last at least a year or so. They cover a lot of topics. So if you haven't done this or you want to learn more about a particular topic, by all means, you can look there. This is a great time to do that. Or by all means, send me a message, and I'm happy to do Kevin's Corner on it. So with that, I want to say thank you all very much. I hope you all stay healthy and well. And thank you, and I will see you again next Thursday for Kevin's Corner.